This is the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, Glenn Scott Shannon, glad you're with us. Sean Hannity Show, toll free. It's 800-941-SEAN. You want to be a part of the program. We are now joined by Senator Orrin, who has come out in opposition to this deal, voted on in the Senate today. Senator, welcome back to the program from the great state of Utah.
Well, nice to be with you, Sean. Appreciate what you do.
Well, Senator, first of all, Senator, I appreciate you voting this way. I really do, and I think you're holding true to your principles, and I know there was a lot of pressure put on you to vote this way.
Well, it wasn't very difficult for me because, frankly, I've been for, cut, cap, and balance, and that means a balanced budget amendment, and we're going to get a vote on it. But right now, it looks like it's going to be very difficult to pass it
in the Senate.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean cut, cap, and balance?
With the full two-thirds vote, we need 67 votes. That means we have to have 20 Democrats, and right now they're doing everything they can to ruin that.
Yeah, well, what's amazing, look, you've been in the Senate a while. You've seen a lot of deals cut over the years.
Oh, yeah.
You ever think we'd get into a situation where a president and a party could spend us into oblivion and then complain that we're not giving them enough money to spend?
Well, he just got on the doggone tube again, just right after the vote, and started calling for tax increases again.
Well, same thing that Harry Reid vowed today to raise taxes again.
No, they're certainly committed to doing that, and they want to raise them so they can spend more money. I mean, what they do is they spend your money and then claim they're compassionate with your dough. I mean, it's just awful.
Well, you know what the biggest problem I see here is this baseline budgeting issue. We keep spending more money every year, and then we talk about savings, but we're only saving small increments because we keep spending more money every year. And I don't get, whatever happened to the idea that maybe we pull our belt tight and live within our means and live within last year's budget for a few years? Why is that such a radical view?
Well, we're not going to get there, Sean, until we get around 60 solid votes in the United States Senate. We're going to have that many votes. And first of all, there are some good things that may come out of this bill today, and that is one thing for sure. It requires a little more accountability is the word I want to come up with, because they're not going to get away with tax increases, I think, with this new committee either. Now, I don't know who's going to be on that, but I can't imagine any Republican being for tax increases. And of course, the president keeps talking about we need to have balance. Well, that means we need taxes. First he asked for a clean debt limit increase. Conservatives refused. Then the conservatives held the line and made clear that any increase in the debt limit would have to be matched with deficit reduction. Secondly, having lost the fight over a clean debt limit increase, the president then insisted on what he called a balanced approach to deficit reduction, but which just meant reducing the deficit by raising taxes. We fought back on that. We all know that that's the primary driver of our debt, that and spending. And regardless of the president's talking points over the last few weeks, non-defense discretionary spending is at historic levels. We're set for our third straight trillion-dollar deficit. We have a national debt of $14.5 trillion, going up every minute that we're talking, and the president's budget would give us $13 trillion more in debt. That's the president's answer to these things. And the answer to this is not giving the government more money to spend. Thirdly, I just say conservatives resisted the effort by the president's allies to push most of the deficit reduction in this package down the road, which is what they wanted to do.
This is what they always do, but isn't that another way of saying that it never happens because future Congresses are never going to be beholden to that, Senator?
It's a little more difficult on this. I will say this: that as much as you don't like, and I didn't like the approach we've had here because it wasn't enough. The Republican leaders in the Senate and the House, particularly Mitch McConnell and House Speaker John Boehner, they extracted some significant concessions from this liberal, big spending, big taxing White House, and they were pushed by the voices of the American people, folks that you deal with every day, who are sick and tired of watching Washington mortgage our children's future off with this $14 trillion debt. And they did change the debate, but and they did force some real spending reductions, but not enough, as you know. And but let me give real credit to the Tea Party. This is a group that's been under fire from the left as a convenient scapegoat to hide the fact that the left doesn't have a plan. The president's never presented a plan. I found that most of the Tea Party people are concerned Americans who are really upset about the direction of our country. They've decided to participate in our democracy, and all I can say is God bless them.
Can you imagine a time where the Vice President of the United States refers to great Americans that all they want is to balance budget? They got involved in the electoral process. They elected people. They tried to hold them accountable, and the Vice President of the United States sits there, saying they've acted like terrorists.
Can you imagine that he would say something like that?
Well, could you imagine if I said, what would happen today if I said that about, Biden himself?
You would get
fired.
Well, you'd get maligned all over the country. No, call them terrorists. I agree with one of the pundits this morning who said, I guess it was last night. He said, they can't use the racist thing anymore because nobody's really a racist, and so what they're not going to use is domestic terrorism. And then to call the Tea Party people terrorists. Look, without the Tea Party, we wouldn't be having any efforts to try and get us to a balanced budget and get spending under control and get this.
How many years now have you supported a balanced budget amendment?
Well, every year I've been here. That's 35 years now. I've been a major spokesman on every balanced budget, and I've been the prime sponsor on most of them. In fact, twice I got within one vote.
Yeah.
The two-thirds vote necessary. Twice. And the first time, Mark Hatfield, and he was sincere. He was the head of the Appropriations Committee, and he just couldn't bring himself to vote for it. We lost. We had 66 votes. The second time, though, I had 67 votes as I walked to the floor to make the final arguments, and John Hines flipped off because the unions threatened him, and that's after we had highlighted him throughout the whole debate, and he flipped off, and of course we lost it by one vote. Can you imagine? Had we passed that balanced budget amendment back in 1990?
Well, you were there for Reagan when you were a good friend of President Reagan, and you were there.
Oh, yeah.
The reason I'm bringing this up because I'm a little bit frustrated that you've been under fire from some people lately. I'm not sure if Clarence Thomas would be on the bench today, but for you.
No, he wouldn't be, and he'd be the first to tell you.
And I don't think guys like John Roberts and Sam Alito would be there either. And I got to tell you, it's frustrating to me because during these tough debates, I think people take the fact that you're a gentleman, which, by the way, is pretty rare in Washington. And, by the way, you're far nicer than me, Senator, and I'm just admitting it.
I'm not nicer than you, but I'm nice.
But they forget, all the times that you have been fighting for these balanced budgets over the years, and they forget what you've done to our Supreme Court, which is impacting this country literally now for generations and decades. And it's frustrating to me because I don't like to see you under fire when people ignore this work that you've done over the years, which is why I've endorsed you for your race and for the Senate.
Well, I appreciate your endorsement. That means more to me than you'll ever know. Mark Levin
does it even mean more to you than Mark? I was going to ask you, who means more, me or Levin? Levin endorsed you too. I just want to know where do I stand in this pecking order here.
You think I'm going to get in the middle of that when Levin was the first one to endorse me?
No. Well,
listen. Let me tell you something. You mean an awful lot to America. You mean a lot to me. You've always been decent to me. You've asked tough questions. You've expected good answers, honest answers, and I've always given them to you. And I got to tell you, I think you do more good than almost anybody. And I've got to say, you and Mark being with me, Hugh Hewitt being with me, and there are a whole bunch of others who are with me. I've been here 35 years. I don't think anybody can match my conservative record.
It frustrates me. This is the thing. I don't think, and you know what? When I interviewed Clarence Thomas, we spoke off camera about you, and I did ask him the question what an integral part you played in him getting, and he said it was massive. And he said it wouldn't have happened. And, I mean, that was look, I'm not sure if at some point, he'd been through so much. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if he said, I've had enough. I'm out of here.
Yeah, he was about to just throw it all over. And I said, you hang right in there. You're going to win this thing.
And you pulled it out.
But it was more than that. I had to rough up a few people, too, because they, one of the toughest was Rehnquist. They were really out to wreck Rehnquist. And here's one of the greatest jurists we've ever had on the bench. They even leaked his health care material. I mean, it was really, really vicious. The only one who was treated more vicious than Rehnquist really was Clarence Thomas. And I have to admit, they were very, very rude to Alito and Roberts, two of the best people I've ever seen. Thomas is writing the best opinions on the court right now.
I think he's a genius. And he
is.
Did you ever read his book, My Grandfather's Son?
Oh, sure.
Isn't that a great book?
It is, and there's a genuinely good man.
He's amazing. Every time I think I'm being too tough on my kids, I think of his book. I'm like, I'm not being tough at all.
I'll never forget. I hope you enjoyed this story because it's true. Kennedy, when he came up for the EEOC, I sat in on all of his confirmations. And most of them were on the Labor and Human Resources Committee then at that time, and then the Judiciary Committee. And when he came up, I did the usual obligatory, questions, and then Kennedy started into them. And the decibel level kept going up and up and up as only Kennedy could do. He started yelling at him and screaming at him. And finally, Clarence slammed his hand down flat on the table and said, "Senator Kennedy." And Kennedy sat back in his chair, and he said, "Senator, I was born in poverty." He said, "We didn't have anything. We didn't even have shoes to wear." He said, "I was raised by my grandparents, and they only had 2 rooms in the house. And one of them was the living room." And he said, but they were good people, and they taught me about decency and so forth. And he said, there were only 3 pictures on the living room wall. Martin Luther King Jr., Jesus Christ, and President John F. Kennedy.
Wow.
And then
that shut Kennedy up, huh?
Well, and then he said this. He said, "Senator Kennedy, if President Kennedy is watching these proceedings, he can't be very well pleased." And I turned to Kennedy and I turned to Ted and I said, "Any more questions?" And he said, "No." It was funny. One of the great times. But Thomas, that's why before Thomas testified, now I had to do the interrogation of Thomas. Senator Specter did the interrogation of Anita Hill. But before Thomas testified, I rammed down to Senator Danforth's office where they were kind of keeping him away from everybody, and rammed right past all of his gatekeepers and went right in, and he was mad as can be. And I said, "Clarence," I said, "you're going to testify." I said, "Number 1, tell the truth." I said, "Number 2, be yourself." And then I wanted to get out of him some kind of answer like he gave to Kennedy in that one particular confirmation hearing. I said, "And number 3, don't take any. I'll use the word crap." I said, "Don't take any crap from anybody." And when he came out, when I was, in the interrogation, he came out and said, "This is nothing but a high-tech lynching," I knew that we were going to win that, because Clarence is nobody to play games with. He's a tough, smart, decent, honorable, good man. I went to Rush's wedding and I saw him about a year ago when Rush got married, and I love his wife Ginny too. She's a wonderful lady. She's a great human being.
And they're trying to attack her even still. I mean, it's unbelievable what they have to live through. But I find him just a mild-mannered, brilliant gentleman. There's an intelligence there. I know I don't have it. I mean, he has a legal mind that is second to none, and because he has a more quiet approach on the bench as opposed to, say, Scalia, who, by the way, I love when Scalia starts arguing with people, but and he's a genius in his own right. I just find, his whole approach to life and his appreciation and his demeanor and his life story, it fascinated me. That book had a very profound impact on me. But the only reason I bring this up is you've always fought for this balanced budget amendment. You were there for the Reagan Revolution. You were there in '95 when the country started getting on the right track, and you were fighting Clinton. You've been there fighting Obama, and people are attacking you. Somebody asked me the other day, "Well, do you know where Senator Hatch?" I said, "There's no way Senator Hatch is voting for this, because I've known your voting record, and it kind of infuriates me." And look, I do forgive you that you did have some friendship with Ted Kennedy, but that's only because you're a gentleman. But there's nobody's perfect, Senator. But I don't like the fact that you've these credentials. We wouldn't have these good people on the bench, but for Orrin Hatch. And
it isn't just the Supreme Court; it's throughout the whole federal court system that we still fight for decent judges. I don't want people who are going to be prejudiced either way. I want people who are going to uphold the law, because if they uphold the law and our Constitution, we'll be all right.
Yeah. Do you have anybody you like for 2012 yet?
Well, I definitely support Romney. He's got the ability and the background, and you'll never see any scandals there. I mean, he's got everything it takes to pull this country out of the economic mess it's in. And I think it's going to take somebody like him.
I think
however, I'll be for any of them. I like all of them. They're all very good people, but I think Mitt is head and shoulders. And frankly, the only one that I think that might really be as close to him would be Christie in New Jersey, and he's right. It'd be better for him to wait a little while before he runs for president. But
what do you think of Marco Rubio, whoever gets the nomination for VP?
Listen, that young man is a very, very good human being.
Isn't he great?
He's smart, and he does a great job. He's a very good, articulate spokesman for the conservative cause, and he's just a fine young man. I'll tell you, I think he could very well make a good vice president.
Now you sound like an elder statesman. He's a fine young lad, this guy, a fine young man.
Well, they're all younger than I am, I think. Well, let me just say this. We've got some really good people. Marco is one of them, and I think he's got a great future.
Well, you got Mike Lee from your state, and
Mike's a good young man.
And you got Rand Paul, and you got all these new guys coming in, and they got a lot of energy and a lot of ideas, and they're certainly principled. I think if we can get the Senate to go Republican and conservative, and we get a new president, I think we could probably fix this mess pretty quick.
Well, I think we could. You know, I like that Rand Paul, too. He's very courteous, very straightforward. You know exactly where he's at. You may not agree with him, but he's always, and he's certainly open to listening. I mean, he's a very fine young man. I think he's one of the best that we've had here in a long time, and I think the world of him.
All right, Senator Orrin Hatch will be watching closely, and thanks for your good vote today. We appreciate it.